Hi guys, in today's lecture I'll be covering chapter 4 of unit 3. The name of this chapter is Intellectual Property Law. So in this chapter we will be seeing the nature and meaning of intellectual property, then we'll be seeing what is intellectual property rights. We'll be seeing different international conventions on intellectual property rights. Then we'll be seeing a small bit about a historical perspective of intellectual property. Then we'll be talking about the different types of intellectual property rights, what are its importance in the commercial world, and in the end we'll be seeing the conclusion. So starting off with meaning of intellectual property. Intellectual property is an intangible property that comes into existence through human intellect. What this basically means, so intangible basically means something that you cannot see or touch. So intellectual property, it is an intangible property and it comes into existence, so it gets formed through human intellect. Human intellect means human intelligence. It refers to the creation of mind or products of human intellect, such as inventions, designs, artistic works, names, symbol, images, etc. So it refers to creation of mind, something that you have created from your mind, or a product which is a product of the human intellect, such as all of these are examples. Next, we are going to see what is intellectual property rights. So, the term intellectual property right, it refers to a bundle of rights that are conferred by law on a creator or owner of intellectual property. Okay, so IPR, it is a bundle of rights, means it's not a single right, it has a lot of rights which is given by the law. Conferred by law means which is given by the law to the owner of the intellectual property. Whoever has created that intellectual property, whoever owns that intellectual property, those bundle of rights are given by law to the owner of the intellectual property. This is known as intellectual property rights. Okay, so these rights are the rights which are given to the person over the creation of their mind, whatever creation that they have made out of their own mind. These are those rights that are given to those type of people. So they give the creator an exclusive right over the use of his or her creation over a certain period of time. Okay, so whoever the creator or the owner of those particular the owner of the intellectual property, they are being given exclusive right, means like a special right over the use of their creation for a certain period of time. It's not indefinite, it's not it's not timeless, it is not permanent, it is just for a certain period of time. They seek to, okay, so the what is the aim of this? It's basically to protect the interest of the creator by rewarding their mental labor and allowing them to retain property rights over their creation. So obviously, while they made those intellectual property, it involves a lot of mental labor, it involves a lot of time, effort, money, right? So of course, when you give so much input, you result out you in sorry you expect some output also, right? So the creators expect that they get rewarded for their mental labor. Okay, so the creators are allowed to benefit from their creations. You can sell it, right? So you can get some monetary benefit out of what you have created. So the main reason why these rights are granted is to basically encourage whatever inventions and creations are done to promote social, economic, scientific and cultural development of society. Okay, so by giving these rights, it helps to encourage or to promote social, economic, scientific, cultural development of society. Again, social, economic, scientific and cultural development of the society. Okay, next we are moving to a very important segment of this chapter. So your intellectual property, it's basically divided into two types. Okay, so first you have your copyright and you have your industrial property. Okay, so copyright basically includes all the literary and artistic works, whereas industrial property consists of four main things: patents, trademarks, industrial designs, and geographical indications. All of these we are going to study in the later sections of the chapter. So, industrial property, as I already told you, it includes inventions of patent, trademark, industrial design, and geographical indications of source. Okay, And copyright includes literary and artistic works. It includes novels, poems, plays, films, musical works, artistic works, all this drawing, painting, photographs, sculptures, architectural design, all of these comes under copyright. Okay. Now we are going to see what are the international obligations that have shaped Indian IPR. So we already know that whatever like laws or whatever different types of acts that are there in India, they have been somewhere or the other influenced by the international, international rights or the international treaties. Okay, so same way Indian IPR has also been shaped by the international obligations. So this is what we are going to see. Okay, so there are two main treaties. First, you have the Paris Convention for the Protection of Industrial Properties. So this includes patent, trademark, industrial design, and geographical indication. So Paris Convention for the Protection of Industrial Property. And second, you have Berne Convention for Protection of Literary and Artistic Work, basically copyright. So Berne is in Switzerland and Paris to Okay. So this was the treaty. The name of the treaty is the Paris Convention for Protection of Industrial Property, and it was enforced on 7 July 1884. Okay. Okay, now what are the principles and objectives? Okay, so first is national treatment. Understand it very carefully. In the context of legal protection for industrial property, the principle of national treatment requires each member country of Paris Convention. See, under Paris Convention, there are a lot of different countries that have signed this. Okay, so each member country which comes under this Paris Convention has to provide equal legal protection for inventions of nationals from other member countries as it would for its own nation. Means, suppose you are an Indian, okay, and you have taken out an invention in India. Now you are going to Paris, okay, and in Paris you have to, you want to get, um, you go to Paris. Now the what national treatment says that when you are going to Paris, they are supposed to give you equal legal protection as they would give to those of their nation. Okay, you're an Indian, you're going to Paris, but they're supposed to give you equal legal protection for whatever invention you have found out, the same way as they would give to their own people. Okay, so equal legal protection for the inventions of nationals from other member countries. You are Indian, your invention you had taken out in India, but now you want it to get implemented in Paris, so that they have to give equal legal protection to that in the same way that they would give to their people. Second is framework of priority. The Paris Convention also upholds the principle of priority framework, allowing an investor to protect their invention simultaneously in various countries. Okay, suppose, see, they are suppose you are in India. Okay, in India you have already, your invention you have already created that in the particular, suppose in the month of July. Okay, now you are going to some other country. Okay, any country you can take in the month of August. Okay, now your whatever you have taken out, whatever invention you have taken out, the original date will be considered to be July. Even if you are going in August, the original date will be taken in July, because that is the date when you had registered your invention, right? So priority framework is there. The day you do the invention, only that day is considered even in other countries. Okay, so investor to protect their invention simultaneously in various countries. Then you have the Berne Convention for the Protection of Literary and Artistic Works, basically copyright, and it came into force on 4th December 1887. This came 7 July 1884. Here you have 4th December 1887. Okay, So, what is the national treatment? It's the same thing. Okay, same what we studied, same thing. Stipulated that any work originating in the contracting state, including works of authors who are nationals of the state or works first published in that state, should receive the same legal protection in every other state as the latter state grants to its own nationals. व्हाट इट बेसिकली सेज कि आपको भी वो सेम प्रोटेक्शन मिलनी चाहिए इन अनदर स्टेट एज दे वुड गिव टू देयर सिटीजन्स. ओके. Second is automatic protection. Now, one key concept in copyright is that the moment your invention it gets published, it gets automatic protection. You don't have to register it. Okay, so mandated that legal protection should be subject to compliance with any formalities. You don't have to register, it automatically gets protected. Okay, then third is independence of protection. Decreed that legal protection should be independent of existence of protection in the country of work of origin. Okay, so legal protection whatever you get, it should be independent of existence of protection in the country of origin of the work, where that work has originated from. Then you have Universal Copyright Convention, UCC. It was established in the year 1952. Okay, this is also the same. The UCC adheres to the principle of national treatment rather than automatic protection. So they do not really follow the automatic protection thing. It implies that contracting countries are not obligated to provide foreign works with automatic protection if the national requirement are not met. So it differs from nation to nation. It is not necessary that all the countries they provide automatic protection. Okay. The term of work under the UCC, original literary, artistic, and scientific work are eligible for protection. Okay, so if the work is original only, then only it is eligible for protection. To provide reasonable notice of the copyright claim, the copyright notice should accompany the work. Okay. UCC stipulates that protection for a work lasts for a duration of the author's lifetime and an additional 25 years following the author's death. So it basically means that whatever protection is given for that particular work, okay, it lasts for the duration of author's lifetime. Jitna, suppose author has lived till 70 years, so till that 70 years and additional 25 years after the author's death. Okay, so basically for 95 years, right? 70 years author जिया and additional 25 years, so 70 plus 25 95 years हो गए. ठीक है, तो ड्यूरेशन ऑफ ऑथर्स लाइफ टाइम एंड एक्स्ट्रा 25 years after the death of the author. Okay. Third is minimum rights. As per UCC's provisions, the contracting countries must provide a specific set of minimum rights to the lawful owner of the work, provided that it does not create any conflict with the spirit of the convention. Okay, minimum rights have to be given to the owner. Okay. Then last you have World Intellectual Property Organization, WIPO. This is important. Okay, so the World Intellectual Property Organization Convention, which is the primary instrument of World Intellectual Property Organization, it was signed on July 14, 1967 in Stockholm, and it came into effect in 1970, and it was amended in 1979. In 1974, the World Intellectual Property Organization became one of the specialized agencies of the UN. Okay, so this is important that the World Intellectual Property Organization, उसके दो objectives थे. There were two objectives. First was to promote the legal protection of intellectual property worldwide. जो complete world में जो intellectual property है उसको legal protection promote karna, that was one of their objectives. Second was to facilitate administrative cooperation between intellectual property unions created by the treaties administered by WIPO. Okay, so these two were the main objectives. First was to promote the legal protection of intellectual property worldwide. Second was to facilitate administrative cooperation between intellectual property unions, जो unions है created by the treaties administered by WIPO. Okay. Next, we are going to the brief historical perspective. So, with the establishment of World Trade Organization, the importance and the role of intellectual property protection, it was crystallized in the trade-related intellectual property system. Okay, it was negotiated at the end of the Uruguay round of the General Agreement on Tariff and Trade Treaty in 1994. The trade related intellectual property system, it came into effect on 1st January 1995, and it is known as one of the most comprehensive multilateral agreement which was on the intellectual property, of course. Okay, and within its provision, it includes all the forms of intellectual property, and it basically aims in harmonizing and strengthening the standards of protection by providing effective enforcement of intellectual property rights at both national level and even international level. Okay, so of course, India is one of the signatory to the trade related intellectual property system, and it has also passed several legislations for protection of intellectual property rights. Some of them are here. Okay, these all of these you're going to study right now, just after this, in the section later section of the chapter. You have the Trademark Act 1999, then you have the Design Act 2000, then you have the Copyright Act 1957, then you have the Patents Act 1970, you have the Geographical Indication of Goods Act 1999, and then you have one more, Protection of Plant Varieties and Farmers Right Act 2001. So the history of patent law dates back to 1911. Okay, this is not that important. Let's move on to the main section of the chapter. So first we are going to see what is copyright. So this is one of a type of intellectual property, copyright. Okay, now what is copyright? Now this is where the chapter gets easy. It is more smooth flowing. Like you see the historical perspective, it's kind of confusing. So many dates are there, so many acts are there, but then when you read this section starting from here, it becomes very easy. Again, this part is also a bit difficult, like the dates are there, then you have to learn all of these, so it gets a bit tricky, but if you understand it will be easier. So first thing is copyright. So what is copyright? Copyright is a right given by the law to the creators of literary, dramatic, musical and artistic works, producers of cinematographic films and sound recordings. It is a bundle of rights including rights of reproduction, communication to the public, adaptation and translation of the work. This all we will be studying later on under copyright only. So this protection is automatic and does not depend on registration. Okay, so let me explain you what it means. So basically, again, copyright, it is basically a right which is given by the law. The law only gives this right to the creators, the owners of the whatever literary, dramatic, musical, artistic work, all of these. Again, it is a bundle of right. It includes right of reproduction, communication to public, adaptation, translation of work. Okay, so this protection is automatic upon the creation of work. Automatically, when you create the work, you are given this right. Okay, it is automatic, you do not have to register it. Okay, it does not depend on registration. What is the scope of protection in the Copyright Act 1957? So in India, the law relating to copyright is governed by the Copyright Act 1957. तो इंडिया में जो भी लॉ कॉपीराइट से रिलेट होता है, इट इज गवर्न बाय दिस कॉपीराइट एक्ट 1957. So to get protection of copyright, a work must be original. So this is one of the main things, that if you want to get protection of copyright, your work, whatever work is there, it has to be original. Okay, it cannot be fake, it cannot be copied. So mere ideas, knowledge or concepts are not copyrightable. Mere ideas, just random ideas or just throwing knowledge or random concepts, they are not copyrightable. It has to be original, it has to be unique, distinctive. Okay, having said that, copyright protects the original expression of information and ideas. So originality is one important aspect. Whatever original expression of information you have given, ideas, that is what copyright protects. Copyright, okay, now who all can claim copyright? Either the creator, or you call as the owner, either the creator can claim it, or inherited the rights of ownership from original creator, or a person who has inherited the rights of ownership from the original creator, or a agent who is allowed to act on behalf of the creator. So these three people or these three categories can claim copyright. Okay, what are these? Either by the creator or the owner, or a person who has inherited the rights of ownership from the creator, or an agent who is allowed to act on behalf of the creator. Okay, so this is copyright. Now what is work? What is work? All subject matters protected by copyright are called protected works. So all the subject matters that come under copyright or what are protected by copyright are called protected works. So section 2 clause y of the act, of which act? Copyright Act 1957. So section 2 clause y of the Copyright Act 1957 defines work. Now work includes all of this: literary, dramatic, musical, artistic, cinematographic, sound recording. All these come under work. All these six come under work. Okay, now when is work protected by copyright? So when can work be protected by copyright? If it falls within the category of work, if it falls under all these six, under any of these six things, or and not or and the work has to be recorded, it has to be in a fixed material form, in a tangible form. Okay, you can see it or you can touch it, tangible form. And lastly, the most important, it has to be original. Registration of copyright. Now, is it necessary to register a work to claim copyright? Of course not, because you automatically get it on the existence of your work. No acquisition of copyright, it is automatic and it does not require any formality. So, see, getting your copyright registered, it is not mandatory because you automatically get that protection. But the certificate of registration of copyright, it saves means it serves as a evidence in the court of law if in future you have disputes that are relating to ownership of copyright. In future, if someone says, no, this is my copyright, I have done this work, I deserve this copyright, okay, and a dispute arises, so how can you prove that who is right and who is wrong? So there it is, it becomes, I'm not saying mandatory, but it becomes as a evidence, you can say, if you have a certificate of registration of copyright. So it is not necessary, but it is recommended. Then what is the procedure for registration of work under the Copyright Act 1957? So copyright comes into existence as soon as the work is created. As soon as your work is created, you get copyright for it. No procedural formalities is required to be completed for acquiring copyright. However, same thing what we saw here, facilities exist for having the work registered in the Registrar of Copyrights. There are facilities that are there so that you can get your work registered in the Registrar of Copyrights. Okay. Now, what is term of copyright? Is copyright protected in perpetuity? Means, is it protected forever? No. Okay, it is protected for a limited period of time. It is not forever. It is not endless. It is for a limited period of time. What is the term of protection of copyright? So, general rule is that copyright lasts for 60 years. Generally, when you say copyright lasts for 60 years, in case of original literary, dramatic, musical, and artistic work, 60 years. This 60 years time period is counted from the year following the death of the author. When the author died, 60 years from that, your copyright lasts. But in cases of cinematographic, films, sound recording, photographs, publications, works of government, works of international organizations, the 60-year is counted from the date of publication, not from the date of death. Okay, this is something that you have to see. General rule, copyright lasts for 60 years. Then you have two cases under that. Okay. Now you have rights of the owner of copyright. This is what is important, what we were already seeing above in the definition of copyright. So rights of the owners of copyright, so you have two types of right, you have economic rights and moral rights. Economic rights are basically, it allows the right owner to derive financial reward from the use of their work by others. Okay, so within this category, you have right to reproduce the work. Reproduction is the act of copying from the previously finished work in or giving it a differential form by adding, editing, or modifying the same. So such right is exclusively exercised by the owner of the work. Only the owner of the work can do this. Okay, and it cannot be infringed. Means no one else except the owner can do this. What act of reproduction? Only the owner can do this. Okay, so it cannot be infringed by any other person, since act of reproduction of work may economically make benefit to owner. So act of reproduction, it by doing this the owner earns money, right? So if someone else, see, if someone apart from the owner does this, they will earn money, right? So that is not right, right? Because they are not the one who have created this. Only the owners are the one who have done this work. Their hard work is there, so they should get the money for it, right? If suppose you are the owner, you should get money for the work that you have done, not someone else, right? So this is what they're saying here. Second is right to distribute in the market. So the owner of the copyrighted work has the right to distribute in the market and make money out of it. Obviously, if they have put so much hard work in the work they have done, they have the right that they can distribute it in the market, and of course by distributing they will get money out of it. So the act of distribution, it can be in many forms, like it can be in the form of sale, they're selling it off, or they're lending it for free. They're lending, okay, you take it, use it and give it back, or for a consideration, or you take it for a period of time, give me money and then you can give me back later. Or it can be for rental or for free distribution. Okay, then you have the right to communication to the public. So it means letting or making the product work and to be available to the public by the way of broadcasting, stimulating, or webcasting. Suppose your product or work is suppose a movie, so you make it available to the public by all these ways. It can be anything, right? It can be a video, it can be a movie. So you make it available to the public. Then you have right of adaptation. Basically, adaptation basically means conversion. When you alterate that work, alteration, transcription, or rearranging a copyrighted work means and includes the right of adaptation. When you conversion is there, alteration, you edit it, transcription, or rearranging that copyrighted work. And the last economic right is right to translate. So the owner of the copyrighted work, they have the right to translate their work to any other language. Okay, then you have moral rights. So moral right would stand a step ahead of economic right. Okay, why? Because they are personal ties between an author and their work. Of course, when the author makes so their work or a product with so much hard work, which involves so much time, money, and effort, of course they are attached to their work, right? So the personal ties between an author and their work is basically the moral right. So they afford control over the creation and protect against modification or alteration, preserving the work's integrity. Okay, so whatever work the author or the creator of that particular product has done, they have the right to protect their work from modification or alteration, and they have to preserve the work's integrity, the value of that work that is there. So under moral rights, you have first is right to paternity. It means the right of the owner of the copyright to claim and prevent others to claim the ownership of his copyright work is said to be right to paternity. It basically means जो भी owner है ना, जिसने copyright लिया है उस upon his work, whatever work he has done, he has taken copyright over that. So the owner has to prevent others to he has to prevent that no one else should take claim of ownership of his work. Okay, basically his work is his work, no one else can take claim over that. Okay, second is right of integrity, the right of the owner of the copyright to protect the reputation of his work from exploitation. So whatever work he has done, he has to keep that work's reputation is in his hand. He should protect his work from any sort of exploitation. And the last is right to retraction. Retraction is an act of taking back the previous assertion made. Maybe he gave some right to someone, okay, someone he gave right on behalf of the owner, right? He gave some right, but now he wants to take it back. So that is retraction. When you take back the previous assertion made, whatever you told, you are taking it back. Okay, so based on this moral rights, you have a small case study given here. The name of the case is Amarnath Sehgal versus Union of India. Okay, so Amarnath Sehgal was a very renowned sculptor, and he was commissioned to create a mural for the Indian government at Vigyan Bhavan. Okay, so he had to create a mural for the Indian government at the Vigyan Bhavan, and he took 5 years to create this work. So much time he took, 5 years to make this sculptor, and it was displayed in the year 1962. But then what happened was, one day what happened was that without notification or consent, without the consent, the government of India, they basically removed the mural that Amarnath Sehgal made, because they had to do some renovations. And what they did was they stored it. Okay, they stored his mural. So basically what happened, there were small minor damages that were caused to that mural. Okay, so Amarnath got to know about it. So Amarnath basically sued the government for violating his moral rights by mistreating his work. So of course personal ties are there with the work. So Amarnath, he got hurt, that how could they do this, how could they cause damage to his work that he spent so much time in making. So he sued the government because they were violating his moral rights, because they mistreated his work. So the Honorable Delhi High Court, it stated that moral rights define the essence of an author's work. So all these moral rights that are given, they define the essence of the author's work, and they cannot be taken away from the author even if the work is sold. Even if you sell your work, those personal ties with the work that you have sold exist. Of course, even suppose you make a painting, it takes you 2 3 years to make this beautiful painting. You have so many emotions tied to that. Even after you sell it, of course the emotions won't fade away, right? So this is moral rights. Even when you sell it, that essence cannot be taken away. Destroying or altering the work was deemed a violation of author's moral rights. So what judgment the Delhi High Court stated, that if you destroy the work or if you alter or modify the work, it is deemed as a violation of the author's moral rights. Okay, then why is this protection required in modern society? Why do you need such protection? Copyright protection. Why copyright is required in modern society? So copyright is required in modern society because it helps to provide legal protection for the creators of the original work, such as literature, music, software, art, whatever. This protection helps to ensure that creators are fairly compensated for their work. Whatever hard work they have done, they have to be compensated for their work, and that their work is not used or copied without permission. If there was no copyright, whatever one person would take out, other could also copy and take it out, right? But now, since there is copyright, your work cannot be used or copied without getting your consent or permission. So copyright, it promotes creativity and innovation. New ideas come up, right? Creativity is also there, innovation is also there, and it also gives creators the exclusive right to control the use of the distribution of their work. They have the rights. Exclusive rights means only they have the rights for that particular work that they have done. Then, copyright plays a role in stopping plagiarism by providing legal protection for original work and giving the creators exclusive rights to control the use and distribution of the work. So, plagiarism means when you use some other person's ideas or work and present them as your own without giving proper credit. You're using someone's idea, or you're using someone's video, someone's work, and you're presenting it as if you have done that, and you have not even given proper credit. So by the way of implementing copyright, it helps to stop plagiarism because it gives legal protection for the original work, and it gives the creators or the owners of the work exclusive right to control the use and distribution of their work. They have the right how they want to use their work, how they want to distribute their work. That is their choice. This protection helps to ensure that creators are fairly compensated for their work and that their work is not used or copied without any permission. When someone is found to have plagiarized, they can be held liable for the copyright infringement. So, if someone, in a case, if they are found to have plagiarized, they have used someone else's work without giving proper credit, they can held liable for the copyright infringement. Infringement means when you're violating copyright, and it can result in legal action, fines, and other consequences. Also means it is by law that you cannot do this. Okay, it can result in legal action also. It is not taken lightly. Okay, however, it is important to note that not all instances of plagiarism are necessary copyright infringement. So not at all times plagiarism is not always associated with copyright infringement. Maybe other situations also can be known as plagiarism, because as copyright law only applies to original work that are fixed in tangible form. So if the work is not original and it is not in a tangible form, then you cannot call it as plagiarism even if someone is copying it without giving credit. Okay, next you have this case study on Eastern Book Company and others, VDB, Modak and others. Okay, and another. Okay, so I've given a very short summary of what the case says because it is very long. So this summary here, it is enough to understand what this case study is saying. So basically, in Eastern Book Company versus TB Modak, the issue was whether publishing Supreme Court judgments involved enough originality for copyright protection. See, every Supreme Court in every case or issue, they give their judgment. Okay, now can that judgment be, can you give copyright claim on that judgment? This was the issue in this case. See, Supreme Court has given a judgment. Is that judgment, can you get copyright on that judgment? Does it involve originality for copyright protection? So basically the defendants, they argued that court judgments are public documents. See, whatever judgment the court has given, they are public documents, everyone gets it, and they do not involve much creativity, so they cannot be protected. So they are not very creative or something like that, they are not innovative, so they should not be protected. However, the Supreme Court held that while the original judgments are free, जो भी original judgment they have given, those are free for everyone to use, but when additional work is done on those judgment, okay, like in this case, the additional work was done by this company known as Eastern Book Company. They did additional work such as arranging paragraphs in judgment. It is, I'm not saying it's disorganized, but it is just given in paragraphs. So arranging those paragraphs, adding numbering, indicating whether the judges agreed or disagreed, it requires skill and judgment. Therefore, this added work, what they have done, is considered original, and this added work can be protected by copyright and others cannot copy it. So original judgments what are given by the Supreme Court or by any court, they are free to be used by anyone, but when additional work is done on those judgments, then they are considered original and they can be protected by copyright, and obviously others cannot copy it. This was what this case study says. You will see a long case study given over here, so a short gist of what this says is what I have just explained. Okay, next moving on to patent. Okay, so what is a patent? Patent is a legal document issued by government to the inventor. Whoever has invented that specific work or product, it is that given to that person. Patent grants an inventor absolute exclusive ownership and right over the invention and the freedom to use and sell the invention. Okay, so whoever gets that patent, sorry, not whoever, means the person who has the inventor of that person, they get the patent. And when you get the patent, it basically gives the inventor absolute ownership over the invention, and they have the freedom to use it and to sell it for a stipulated time period. Obviously, it is not endless. It is a statutory right for an invention granted for a limited period of time to the patentee by the government. Patentee is the owner of the patent. And in exchange of full disclosure of his invention, now in exchange the government also wants something. So they want that the patentee, he or she gives full disclosure of his or her invention for excluding others from making, using, or selling or importing the patented product or process, for producing that product for those purpose without his consent. Okay, that is why patent is given, so that no one else can make that product or use it or sell it. Okay, what is the term of a patent in Indian system? The term of every patent granted in India is 20 years from the date of filing of application. For copyright, it was 60 years. Then you had certain cases that was given 60 years from the date of death or 60 years from the date of publication. Here, the term for every patent granted in India is 20 years from the date of filing of application. You have filed your application, from that date 20 years is the term period for your patent. Which act governs the patent system in India? The patent system in India is governed by the Patent Act 1970, which was amended in 2005 under the Patent Rules 2003. Now, what can be patented? This is very important. Before getting an idea patented, the investor must ensure its patentability. Okay, and suppose an investor has made an idea, they have to see whether it can be patented or not. Okay, so these are the main three requirements that the investor has to see. So this is what the inventor has to see basically before they can before the idea can qualify to be patentable. Okay, so first is novelty. Basically, the invention must contain one or more unique and new elements. It should be unique. It shouldn't be something that is already existing, right? It should have something unique in it. It should be new and original. It should not be published anywhere else in the world. Second is non obviousness. It means like whatever idea or whatever idea the inventor is getting patented, it should not be simple, it shouldn't be obvious changes to already existing inventions. Okay, that cannot be called an invention. Okay, the invention must be a notable change, something unique, something that is completely changing the idea. Okay, and it should add to the existing technical knowledge in terms of uniqueness and commercial viability. And the last is industrial application. The invention must have some utility. Okay, matlab it should have some purpose. It is not just for the sake you are doing it. It should have utility. Invention is patentable if it is capable of commercialization. Commercialization means if it is able to be used in the market, you're able to sell or you're able to make money out of it. So the purpose of patent law was basically to encourage scientific research, new technology, industrial progress. All this was the purpose. Okay, now you have what is a trademark. So a mark is a distinguishing symbol which any person can use to exert public attention, right? You create a symbol, it helps to gain public attention, or it helps to create some kind of impression in the minds of people. Wow, this symbol is so unique, it is so pretty, it is beautifully designed. So it keeps an everlasting image in the minds of the people. So trademark is basically a brand entity which has the capability to distinguish one's goods and service from another's person goods and services. Okay, a trademark, it helps to distinguish one person's goods from another person. Okay, it includes words, design, logo, shape of goods, the packaging, the combination of colors. All this comes under trademark. So different logos help to distinguish one person's goods, one brand's goods and service from the other brands, right? So trademark right, it is basically in India, it is protected under the Trademark Act 1999. What is the function of trademark? Four basic function. It helps to identify the goods and service and what is its origin. It helps to guarantee see packaging, right? So packaging helps in the to know what is the origin. It guarantees its unchanged quality, so standardized quality has to be there, right? standardization has to be there, so that predetermined quality of a good, you already know that okay, this brand offers good quality of good. So that how you know this brand comes from trademark, right? This brand, how do you identify a brand? From its design, logo, shape of good, word, whatever, all comes under trademark. It advertises the good or service just by showing the logo only. It acts like a promotional tool. It is like a advertisement for your product. And lastly, it creates an image for the goods or services. Who benefits from trademark? The registered proprietor of a trademark can create, establish, and protect the goodwill of his product. The registered proprietor means the registered owner of a trademark can create, establish, and protect the goodwill of his products or service, and he can also stop other traders from unlawfully using his trademark, and he can even sue for damages and secure destruction of infringing goods or labels. So nobody else can have that similar trademark once it gets trademarked. Okay, now what is trade name? A trade name is an official name under which a company operates. Okay, trade name: Starbucks, Adidas, Nike, trade name. Okay, and it is also known as a doing business. Okay, doing business name or a assumed name for that particular brand. On the other hand, a trademark is a name, symbol, logo, slogan, or sound that a business uses to market its product and service. It is a unique identifier that helps consumers to differentiate the product and service of one company from other. Both trade name and trademark are important element of company's brand, and they play a very crucial role because it helps to build and protect the company's reputation and overall identity. Now, what is the difference between trade name and trademark? So basically, trade name does not provide brand name protection on its own. Just by a trade name, it is not providing you a brand name protection, but registering it is an important step in protecting the name. But once you register it, then it becomes a very important, it become once you register it, that name is getting protected. On the other hand, the trademark provides protection for a brand name. So whatever trademark is there, it is giving protection for your brand name, and it helps to distinguish one company's products from the other. In many cases, a company's trade name becomes its trademark. So many cases, the name only becomes the mark. For example, Google, right? G. Google, full Google, only the trade name only becomes the trademark. When you go to the Google tab, Google is only its logo, its name, its design, symbol. So registering a trademark offers additional protection. So if you register your trademark, it offers additional protection. Okay, and it helps to secure the brand's identity also. Then what is trade secret? So what is a secret? Secret is something that is kept confidential. Not a lot of people know about it. Okay. Same way, trade secret, it includes a range of confidential information that is important for success and survival of business. You can give a lot of examples like, let's talk about KFC. Have you ever heard what is the recipe of their, how do they make their goods? No, you will not ever hear it out loud. You will never hear it because it is kept as a secret, because it is important for the success and survival of the business. If openly, if all these brands tell what they use to make their products, then anyone can replicate it or make it, right? So it is confidential information, and it is important for the success and survival of a business. This information can be in the form of strategies. It can be strategies that a business wants to adopt in the future or has adopted. It can be in the form of designs or whatever client databases are there, whatever formulas are there, whatever programs they are using, or any other confidential information that has to be kept secret to maintain a competitive advantage of a business. So there was a landmark decision that was made by Delhi High Court in the Burlington Home Shopping Private Limited versus Rajneesh Chibber. Okay, in 1995, basically. Trade secret, it is defined as information which has a commercial value. Of course, it has a value attached to it, and it is not available to the general public domain, and the disclosure of which would cause significant harm to the owner. So if this secret gets disclosed, it causes harm to the owner. Trade related aspects of intellectual property rights agreement from the same year defines trade secret. So this TRIPS, basically what we have seen before, it defines trade secret as a information which is kept secret and it has commercial value, and the owner of the information takes steps to keep it a secret. So the owner of the information, they take all the steps to, in order to keep it secret, so that it does not get leaked or the public doesn't get to know about it. Okay, so there is no specific legislation that provides protection to trade secrets like for all other copyright, patent, trademark. We have seen certain acts that protect these, or under which it falls. But in trade secret, you have no such legislation that protects it. But it can be protected under different statutes. Like you have the Section 272 of India of the Indian Contract Act 1872. Okay, and Indian courts, they have also recognized trade secret based on the equity principles and common law. So all this is there, and this helps to secure confidentiality of the firm's trade secrets and to prevent unauthorized disclosure. Okay, now these are some of the logos that they have given you, trademarks of some companies that they have given you, symbols. See, symbols have been used over here. Symbol, it can be a symbol, it can be a full-fledged, the name itself is adding, is acting like the trademark Colgate. See, um, all of these are some examples. Walmart, all of these are examples that they have given to you. Now the last topic is geographical indication. Okay, so what is geographical indication? A geographical indication is a legal designation that identifies a product as originating from a specific region or geographical location. See, wherever your product is made in some other place and it is distributed over a wide geographical area. So where that product has originated from, that indicates a geographical indication. So the product as originating from a specific region or a specific location, it is having certain qualities, characteristics, or reputation that are unique to that particular place. So the geographical indication, it basically protects the product's authenticity and quality and helps the consumers identify the product's origin and reputation. Certain products are unique, or certain products are made to be made in a specific region, right? Certain products are, the consumers prefer it to be made in that particular area because it has that particular area specializes in making that product. So this geographical indication, it helps to protect the product's authenticity and quality also. Okay, it is protected by the Geographical Indication on Goods Act 1999. It provides for the registration for better protection of geographical indication relating to goods in India. Okay, so some examples are there like Fulkari handicraft. Basically, it is seen in Punjab, Haryana, Rajasthan. Then you have Worli painting, which is very famous in Maharashtra, Gujarat, and Daman and Diu. Then you have Malabar Robusta coffee, which is very famous in Kerala and Karnataka. Then you have Darjeeling tea, which is seen in West Bengal. Then you have Pochampli Ikat, which is seen in Telangana. So all these are known as geographical origins for the particular products. Now, what is geographical origin? Geographical origin, it basically refers to a specific place where the product originates from. Where that product has originated from, that is known as origin. Where have you originated from? This includes location where the raw materials are sourced, where the production is taking place, or where that particular process or technique is used to make that product. Geographical origin can have significant impact on the quality, reputation, and cultural identity of a product. Suppose someone wants to buy Darjeeling tea, they will prefer that. See, Darjeeling tea is very well made in West Bengal, so they will prefer to buy it. They'll prefer to buy Darjeeling tea which is originated from West Bengal because that specific country specializes it. That cultural identity will be there in the product. Okay, So this is used as a way of distinguishing and promoting the product also. When they will see, okay, this is Darjeeling tea from West Bengal, it is a promotional technique that is used. Okay, and in some cases geographical origin is also protected by intellectual property laws, such as your geographical indication. So geographical indication also protects your geographical origin. Last, you have designs. Okay, industrial designs. Design intellectual property refers to original unique creations of mind that is used commercially. So the Design Act 2000 is a law relating to protection of design in India. And this law basically, it helps the creators to earn recognition and financial benefit for whatever product they have made, and it also helps to prevent others from using their creation without their permission. A design right protects the origin and aesthetically unique appearance of the manufactured item, as long as it is new and it is not obvious. So obviously it should be something new, it should be something that is, it should not be something that is obvious, simple. No, it should be something that is original, new, aesthetically unique, okay, in terms of appearance. Okay, then any design invented by a person shall be protected by this Design Act 2000. Shapes, colors, line, pattern, they all come under designs. A design may not be eligible for registration. Okay, so a design usually it is eligible for registration, but in certain circumstances it is not eligible if it lacks individual character, if it is considered offensive, if that design is considered offensive, or if its appearance is solely dictated by its function. Okay, so these criteria are used to assess the registerability of a design and ensure that it meets a specific standard for protection under the intellectual property law. Okay, so all of this is there, whatever we have seen, and the ending of the chapter conclusion, we see that IPR, intellectual property rights, they are exclusive rights to individuals for a limited time period. Okay, and they allow them to exploit income from cultural expressions and inventions. When someone creates a product, it takes a lot of time, money, and effort. It is only natural for the inventor or organization to want to own the exclusive right for whatever work or invention they have done, so that others cannot benefit from it without taking permission. It encourages creativity, innovation by granting economic benefit to the creator, and it also promotes economic growth through competition and protection of rights. All of this is just given to you, can just read through it. So with this we come to the end of the chapter, and so we come to the end of the chapter. I hope you understood this chapter in a proper and a simple way. I try to explain it in the most simplest way that I could have. Everything I've explained to you, what are the types of property, what is uh, sorry, not this, I explained you what intellectual property means, I explained you what intellectual property rights means, international conventions, I explained you this. Then I also explained you what is the historical perspective. Everything I've explained to you, what are the types of intellectual properties, all of this I have gone through it in a very proper manner. So I hope you understood everything, and if you didn't, then you can rewind the video and you can go through it again and just read through it. It is very simple if you completely like read and understand it. And it is important in this chapter, what all are important I've already told you. You need to know the dates of each of the act: Copyright Act, Patent Act, Trademark Act, Design Act, geographical indication, all the dates you need to know. Then you need to know what is the time period, like for copyright 60 years, then 20 years, you need to know the time period. And all of these things are very simple things that are there in this chapter. So I hope you like this video, and I'll be coming with more videos from Legal Studies Class 12. So thank you all.